Hello, friends. Thank you for joining my Saturday Spice Kitchen. And I'm really happy to see you here. Some people are still joining, so I'll start in just a few seconds. So, today we're going to be doing one of my favorite dishes, which is Adraki Jhinga, which means ginger prawns. And it's a really tasty way of doing prawns with ginger, fresh root ginger, rather than garlic, as you often find. And to go with that, I'm going to make a nice light lemon rice. So both of these dishes are relatively simple. I hope that you'll find them quite easy to reproduce at home. And I'll talk you through the ingredients first, and then we can start cooking. And the video for this should be available on IGTV, which is where I normally put them up. So I'm going to take you over to the other side of my kitchen so that I can talk you through the ingredients. Hang on a second, let's just position this properly. And you should be able to see my work surface now. So I'll start by showing you all the different ingredients. I'm just going to move this pot out of the way. And I'm going to start with the Adraki Jhinga. So I've got these prawns here. They're really nice and big prawns. And I've put them out at room temperature. So I've sort of took them out of the fridge an hour before I started to cook them, because I think it's a really good idea to have them at more or less room temperature when you cook them. Otherwise they can get quite tough, because you don't really want to spend that much time with them cooking in the sauce, because they can get overcooked and tough quite quickly. And what I've done with these prawns also, I want to explain to you, is I've slit the backs of each prawn. Now that may seem a bit labor intensive, but as you can see, these are nice and big prawns, and that makes your job a bit easier. And the reason for doing that is not just to devein them and remove any dirt from inside, but also so that the sauce and all the flavors penetrate nicely. So I would suggest that you do this. Obviously, if you're cooking a huge amount or your prawns are really small, then you can forget about this step. But I really do recommend that to get a nice curry and getting all the flavors going through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some lime juice and salt on these to start with, and some turmeric as well. And while they sit in that, I'll start preparing the sauce for the prawns. So I'm going to use a bottled juice, because it's really handy to have this in your fridge. And I'm just going to give it I don't measure things, so I've gone over that about 3 times, sprinkling lime juice on there. So I reckon that's about a tablespoon and a half, or a couple of tablespoons. I'm also going to go in there with some salt. So this would be about a teaspoon of salt. You can adjust the level of salt later. And I will also add turmeric. And you often see this in Indian seafood dishes, because turmeric and salt are anti-microbes. So in hot climates, they really do serve an important function. And actually, if you've got your prawns at room temperature on your kitchen surface, it's a good idea to do this anyway. So you can do this as soon as you get them out of the fridge, to stop them from kind of deteriorating biologically, as it were. So I'm just going to give that a good mix and let them sit in that lime juice. And now I'm going to start preparing the sauce for the prawns. So I've got a nice heavy pot. I say this with every cooking broadcast of mine, that I really like to use heavy pans, because they give such a nice they cook the dish so nice and evenly, and the end result is really nice. Hi everyone. I can see various names have popped up on my screen, but So I'm just going to wave, but I can't really see them very clearly. So hopefully you'll forgive me for that. So I've got about, I'm just add a bit more oil in here. I've got a couple of tablespoons of oil in here, and I'm going to start by heating the oil. So put it on a high heat, and I'll talk, while that's heating up, I'll talk you through the ingredients I'm going to use for this. So here I've got some freshly ground ginger root, and it's really handy to have a kind of wet and dry grinder in your kitchen, because you can make your own pastes and purees and things like that, which really do give you a good taste, rather than buying you know, pastes and ground up stuff in jars. I mean, if you have to, you have to, but if you can make it fresh, that would be a really good idea. I've got one red onion here, also ground up fine. I've got 2 ripe tomatoes made into a puree, again homemade. I've got good old Colemans Mustard here. I'm just going to add a tiny dash of that. I've got some fennel powder here, which I just ground up the seeds. If you just buy fennel seeds, it gives a lovely sort of aromatic flavor to the dish. And I've got, again, a ground up coriander seed here, which I'm going to use in this dish. And most importantly, we have kalonji, which is also called nigella in English, these beautiful black seeds which really add like a subtle but unmistakable oniony flavor to the dish. So let's start. I'll take the lids off everything to make it easier for myself. And I've got a couple of green chilies somewhere as well here. So I've cut the green chilies lengthways, and this sort of helps to release the heat and the flavor. And green chilies have quite a distinctive flavor compared to red chilies, as I'm sure you know. So I'm going to add those in quite soon. So let's start with some, oh yeah, I didn't tell you about the mustard seed here. I'm just going to put in a little bit of brown mustard, not too much, and these spoons are tiny. They're probably the equivalent of half a teaspoon, so 1 level teaspoon altogether. And when that will start to pop quite soon, then I'm going to put in this nigella seed. I can put it in straight away and let it sizzle in there at the same time. And I wonder if you can actually see what's going on in the pan. I'll try and tilt it towards you. But you should see the seeds sort of sizzling nicely in the fat, in the oil. 1 second. Yeah, I think that's a bit clearer. So they're sort of sizzling in there nicely. Now we'll go in with the green chilies. And I've turned the heat down now because it's quite hot, this oil, and we don't want anything to burn. So I'll press the green chilies down with this spoon, and that allows the flavor to infuse the oil. I often do this with things that I add directly to the oil, because also that means you don't need a lot of oil to cook your dish in. So next we'll go in with the onion now. So that took about a minute, I'd say. And the chilies look a bit blistered, and you know, they've definitely released it. So as you can see, they've kind of got white blisters on them. So now let's put in the onion. Already all sorts of smells are starting to come from this, and the blending together. So it's very important to keep a sequence of ingredients, because that way you make sure that the flavors are layered, and that's quite important, because if you put everything in at once, it wouldn't be as sophisticated a dish. So it's a good idea to cook the onions quite a bit to get rid of that sort of raw smell, because otherwise that then dominates everything in the dish. So I'm going to give those a couple of minutes to simmer in there. Let's get all of these things. I'll just get a spoon for the mustard. The mustard thing is optional, by the way. I mean, I just like a little bit of mustard in there, but obviously if you're allergic or you find it too strong, you can leave that out. And I'm not going to add a large amount, just half a teaspoon of that to give the gravy a nice rich taste. Okay, so now I'm going to add the tomatoes. And I'll turn up the heat a little bit so that we can speed the process up a bit. I mean, if you're making this at home, I would suggest that you give this a bit longer, but I'm kind of doing this a little bit faster right now because obviously I don't want to keep you here just waiting for me to get the tomatoes to the desired level. But I would give this a good 4 or 5 minutes. Until the tomatoes slightly change their color, so that you know that nothing's going to have that sort of raw, undercooked, you know, very sort of crude flavor. So this is quite important. Both the onions and the tomatoes need to cook enough. So next we will put in, I'll just use that spoon. Put in the ginger now. I like quite a lot of ginger. Again, this is up to you how much you want to put in. So I'm going to put in like a generous teaspoonful in there, maybe even a bit more. And just to say, I had 800 grams of prawns there. And the reason for having that slightly odd quantity is that they came in a kilogram pack and the net drained weight is 800 grams. So that's why I have 800 grams of prawns. So this is now starting to sort of come together nicely. It's also starting to smell rather nice. I'm going to now put in some coriander. This you can be quite generous with, as I often say, because it's a good sort of bulking up thing for getting a nice sauce, and also adds a nice kind of background note to your food. You know, it's not a kind of sharp dominant flavor, but it is very, very nice in the background. So I added 2 generous teaspoons of that. And this is cooking away nicely. Now I'm going to add some fennel. I'd say that's about a teaspoonful, just about. I'm not very precise with quantities, you'll notice, and you may find that a bit annoying, but that's the way I was taught to cook, by eye and by feel, and to develop an instinct for the ingredients and to understand the way in which they should be cooked and the order in which they should go, and then you can adjust levels according to your preference. So it's important to understand your ingredients, really. Now what you'll see here in the sauce, and I'm trying to bring this closer, is that there's a slight separation of the oil happening there. That's a good sign, and that means that we're more or less ready to go in with the prawns. So here we are, prawns, and we're not going to spend a lot of time cooking these prawns, so I might actually add some water first so I don't have to do it afterwards. And add hot water where you can. That's about half a cup full of water. Bring that to the boil, and then you see there's a kind of a nice sauce here already. And as soon as that breaks into a boil, I'm going to put in these prawns. I'm going to add the mustard now as well, so only that much. And these flavors really complement each other very nicely. Green chili, nigella, mustard, tomato, and the kind of sourness or the tartness of the lime that we've marinated these prawns in. So I'm going to go in with the prawns now because that sauce has started to boil. Ooh, lots of prawns. And ideally you would give these no more than 4 minutes. You know, they'll start to change color very quickly, and they'll go this lovely sort of pinkish color, and because we've slit them on the back, they will cook very quickly as well, and you know, all that lovely flavor will start to go in there. So while that's happening, I will prepare the last 2 ingredients for this, which is really like a garnish. And so I've got some, you know, 1 piece of ginger here, some coriander, which I'm just going to chop so that I can put it on top, and that adds to the taste but also gives it a nice kind of dressy appearance. And these I'm going to try and skillfully sliver. Give that a stir. Oh, that looks so good. Pop the lid on for a bit. So slivered ginger is a very kind of North Indian thing, and when I was a kid, you know, it was very common to see that on all sorts of dishes like chana and even meat dishes. You know, you'd have these slivers of ginger, and it's really stayed with me since then, and I love using slivers of ginger. I'm not very skilled at making them, but there you go, that's better than nothing. And we'll add those at the end. So these are now starting to go this kind of gorgeous pink color, and as soon as they, you know, all of them stop looking translucent, you know that they're cooked and you can take it off the flame. And if you find that the 2 green chilies haven't given it enough heat, you can add a touch of red chili powder just to make it a bit stronger, and that again is a matter of taste. If you like your food hot, you can do that, you know, just add a bit of heat to it. Now these are almost done. Oh my god, look at that, beautiful. And these prawns are really such a nice size. I mean, again, you know, this is a matter of preference. Some people like smaller prawns because they do have a different flavor, but I really like these large prawns. And actually, I mean, they are from India. There's a company that sells them frozen, which is not ideal, but if you defrost them in time and bring them to room temperature, then you know, they're almost as good as fresh. Right, well, I think these are practically ready. I'm just going to give them 1 more blast there, and then I'll plate them up. So they're completely now opaque, you know, the colors change to orange, the whites of the prawns have become completely opaque. So you know these are done. I've switched off the heat now, and I'm going to plate them up, because really overcooking them is not a good idea. Beautiful prawns. Okay, and now we can add some coriander on top and the slivered ginger. There you go. That's the Adraki Jhinga. Hope you like that dish. I'll set this aside and then we can start the rice. Let me remove all of this. So the rice dish I'm going to show you is lemon rice, which is, it's basically a South Indian dish. I'm doing a slightly different version because I'm going to use cashews instead of peanuts, which is the classic thing to use for this dish. So that's why it's a little bit different, but basically the ingredients are the same. Bear with me. There we go. So again, we start with some oil in a pan. Switch on the heat. And I've got a spoon. So a couple of these dessert spoons dessert spoons of oil. And for this dish, for the lemon rice, I'm going to use dry red chillies in the tadka because they give a different chili flavor and it's really very distinct and very nice. And I've got my cashews here for this rice. I've got some curry leaves. These were frozen so they look a bit slightly discolored, but the flavor is good enough. And I'm going to use asafoetida and turmeric, and again some black or brown mustard, however you want to refer to it. So let's get started. Now this oil should be hot, and I seem to have lost my little spoon. Never mind, we can just use this. So I'm just going to go in with about a teaspoon of mustard. Just get a teaspoon actually. And when that starts to crackle, which should happen quite soon, I'll put in the asafoetida and turmeric. So I'm not sure if you can see that. Yes, I think you can. So I'm just going to wait for this to start popping, and I'm going to do this with ready-made rice. So this is actually quite a good dish to use up leftover rice, and it may have in fact been one of those dishes that was invented for the purpose. I don't know. So I've got 2 cups of basmati rice cooked here in my rice cooker. I mean, you can make the rice by boiling as well, but just have cooked rice ready, and it's cooked and cooled down. That's how I prefer to use it. Otherwise it can become rather sticky. So I'm just going to loosen up the rice a little bit while we're waiting for, the seeds to pop in there, and hopefully it won't form clumps when we fry it up. And we can add a bit of water to loosen it up as well if it's getting too clumpy. There we go. Now these seeds are popping actively, so I'll turn the heat down and I will add the red chilies first. So I'm going to add a couple of these dry red chilies. You can get them very easily in Indian shops. Oops, yeah, that's just about visible there. Add a little bit of asafoetida, only a pinch. And asafoetida has a very, very pungent flavor, so it may smell very sort of unattractive when you first smell it, but when you add it to a dish like this, the end result is rather nice. Now I'm going to add the curry leaves. I've got about, I don't know, 20 or so curry leaves here, and they give a lovely, lovely flavor to the dish. So you put them straight into the oil like that, fry them. Then I'll put the turmeric last because that burns really quickly. I'm going to put in the cashew nuts now. And I like to brown them a little bit. So I'm just going to brown these gently in the oil, just to get that kind of nice crunchiness. I mean, the traditional way of making this would be to use red skinned peanuts, you know, with the skins on. And they taste beautiful. In lemon rice or many dishes, but I didn't have them and I wanted to use cashews, so that's what I'm using here today. So the last thing I'm putting in here now, oopsies, is turmeric. A good half spoon in there. And now quickly add the rice because you don't want that turmeric to burn. And it does burn rather quickly. Whoops, there you go. Rice is slightly caught on the bottom in that rice cooker, so I'm going to have to probably put in a little bit of water to free up the lumps, so I'll do that. Yeah, that makes it a lot easier to now free up the rice, as you can see. And the turmeric color will go through the rice, so you want it to look a nice yellow color. There we go. That looks beautiful. I haven't put in all the rice. Seems to have made rather a lot here. Don't need that much. And just keep stirring it. Add a bit of lemon juice at this stage. I don't like to add the lemon juice before this, also because, you know, it conserves a nice sharp and clear taste of the lime juice if you add it towards the end, I feel. But different people have different preferences. So again, I'm going to give this a generous squirt of lime juice. This is up to you really how much you put in. It's a matter of personal taste. If you don't like it very sour, just put in a little bit. If you like a lot of lime juice in there, then add more. You can taste it in between and see how you find it. This should have a little bite to it in the sense that we added those 2 dry red chilies at the beginning. They should, you know, create this kind of slight heat to this. Not a lot, but a little bit. And that should be enough to make it a nice sort of accompaniment with something. I'm going to add a teaspoonful of salt, stir it nicely, mixing through all the different flavors in there. And this is really nice to serve with other dishes like curries and things, because it isn't all that dominating in flavor, but it's got enough of a kind of interesting element in there to make your meal interesting. And it's nice to look at as well, so it looks really pleasant. So there we go, that's almost ready. And I can plate that up as well. It smells delicious. I love lemon rice. So I'm going to plate that now. Switch off the heat. And you can see all the different elements of the rice showing. Hopefully you can see that. Again, this is a really nice dish if you're doing a dinner party, you know, and you want to have a sort of nice, interesting looking side dish, you can have this lovely lemon rice there with the cashews showing on the top. Sometimes, if you want to make it really showy, you can even fry your cashews separately and add them on top, or add a few more nuts if you like it very, very nutty. And yeah, there you are. That's the lemon rice.